pushed them all the way back to Egypt, and because they were forced by successive invasions of the Muslims, they were forced to go on the hills and mountains to defend themselves. They really never mixed with the Arabs.
Content over everything!
A few did, but a big majority did not. That's why when you go to Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, you see a lot of blonde, blue eyes. And actually, they are not even Muslim, these people. They don't like Muslim religion. Still nowadays, they have a religion, it's called animistic. Animistic religion means a type of religion that somehow it is connected to the love of nature. You know, Africans on the big percentage are very children-oriented. Children are considered part of nature. You know, when they see children, they think this is the sprout and the bud towards a new life, a new future generation. So these people are working class and are white. White what means? Flat forehead. Look at my forehead. That is a feature of the white race. Flat forehead, and usually the eyes are not as big as the African. The Africans have bigger eyes. So white race don't have much big eyes. And they have, except the Anglos, upturned, a little bit upturned, while the Anglos have downturned, but it's still, you know, these are the characteristics of the white race. So when you talk about Global South, you have to understand in Latin America, the most productive working class are of Spanish origins. Like they work in manufacturing, that it takes quite a bit of skill, and they are of Spanish origin. And Spanish, by definition, are white race. Look at all the most important features and the most important politicians, revolutionaries, all of Spanish origin. Che Guevara was a mixture of Spanish and Irish. Castro, pure Spanish. Zapata, Spanish. Pancho Villa, Germanic. And Sandinista, you know, that gave rise to Sandinistas in Nicaragua, Spanish. All the Correa is Spanish origin, Maduro is Spanish origin, Chavez is mestizo, but with a lot of white European blood. So this is why I say, drop the word third world. Adopt the word Global South, where the majority of the world population lives. The majority of people in the world live in the Global South. And they are the locomotive and the engine of our own prosperity, so-called Global North. So be careful when you use terms. Terms can be very insulting. That's why in politics they change the word third world into Global South. No more third world. It's very insulting and it's wrong to use it. So if you want to connect to the world economy, you have to understand that there are two categories of the working class. One category is the working class that is so-called productive, in the sense of factory workers. Factory workers are productive because they somehow contribute to the capital of the employer. They are those who fatten the coffins of the employer, and they create wealth, they create capital. Then there is another part of the working class that is called the services working class. Obviously, services implies mostly clerical jobs, sitting on a desk, on a computer, that is intended as services. But even to work at McDonald's is not so much a service. It is still labor, not inside the factory. It is part services, but part manufacturing labor. What do they manufacture? They manufacture hamburgers, they manufacture whatever salad, still within manufacturing. Because when you eat a salad at McDonald's, or a hamburger, or a fries, these imply manual labor, so they are called service because they create a service to society when you can afford a cheap meal, you know, without going bankrupt. With £5, maybe £10, you have a meal that would cost you probably 20 or 30 in a restaurant. But these are still part of manufacturing labor. So, do you agree with me that it's wrong to call third world people third world people? I said it's third.
Meat and cake.
What do you use to imply people that come from poor countries? What word do you use, you personally?
Wogs.
What?
Wog.
What does it mean, wog?
Foreign.
Ah, foreigner, okay, well, it is true. But the majority of third world people don't come to Europe. The majority stay in third world countries. Because to come to Europe, you have to have at least £5,000 to cross the sea. So those that come to Europe are actually upper middle class in Africa, in Middle East, in Asia, or Latin America, because they can afford the crossing.
They come here for life, they don't come here for work.
Well, they come as economic immigrant.
Better life, yeah.
For a better life. Economic immigrant means I get 3 times the wages I will get in a poor country, so-called banana republic. Obviously, that is very attractive to them. Hello. You see, this lady, for example, she comes from a third world countries, and she's very conscious and very knowledgeable about the hell of an existence of living from hand to mouth, and really
The problem
tomorrow.
with that is it assumes that there are no poor people in this country, that they do not live from hand to mouth. If you read the book Dark Strangers by Sheila Patterson, it was the first study done in the 1950s of the West Indian community in the United Kingdom. And she remarked that the West Indians were shocked. They didn't realise that there were poor English people.
Yes.
They did not know until they came here that these kinds of people existed, because in their country they only experienced the wealthy.
Yeah, obviously, when they come here, they come already like a type of, from a community that is not dirt poor.
They come from
You
wealthy,
know, they have
they're
enough
middle class.
money to get a better ticket.
That's a different debate.
Can you come here? Can you come here?
It's not about economics, I'm talking about social, because it's the social impact that affects people, because the economy, it's always the people at the top.
Is he coming today?
How many should be coming later?
3 or 4.
Why should I? Why should I? You're moralising now, you're doing it, you're using money. That is not.
Can you come here?
That is not the argument. You are moralising by using economics. And the thing is, what the prover proves is the thing.
I tell you one thing, my real gentlemen here, authentic gentlemen, if you never went there, they should not come here.
I had never went there.
Why?
My
Your
father was
forefather
Irish.
went.
For 800 years, the Irish have been fighting a war, an imperial war against the British, and now
So-
they've been colonised by the EU. Don't give me that fucking racist horseshit because of the colour of my
Cool
skin.
down, cool down. Cool
then
down.
don't shout at me.
I don't shout at you. I'm just saying the third world people.
It is far more complex than rich and poor and
come
money.
Here because you were there in 1820. India was the richest country in the world. Same China.
And now it still is
When
because the British built infrastructure.
When the European invader went there, they underdeveloped both China and India. Fortunately, China had a communist, Marxist, Leninist revolution, and now is the leading economy in the world. India, who is conservative, backward,
okay.
because
what about
what the
Holodomor?
British did.
What about the 13 million people in the Ukraine that were starved to death by your buddy Stalin?
By your propaganda machine.
It's not propaganda,
By
it's the
your
truth.
fake news.
It's the truth.
That you believe like
Pas
a
te faire
puppet.
foutre.
A bootlicker of the exploiters.
Murderers.
You are a bootlicker
Mass
of
murderers.
exploiters.
Mass murderers.
There's no dialogue with you.
There's
You
no
know
dialogue
what
with you either.
What the communists
I've seen
said,
your type before.
After Mussolini and Hitler were executed, there's no dialogue with these scumbags. No way you can talk
Well,
to
Hitler did a
these
dialogue with
scumbags.
Stalin.
In any case, she knows she comes from a poor country.
She
that
knows
was
her own
exploited.
experience, so her experience is more valuable than mine. Yes?
What is your experience?
Oh,
What
you
is
haven't
it?
asked me. You call me a
Before
scumbag.
Besides using the word F, that you get arrested by the police,
Your
and beside yelling and
your
screaming.
religion died within 100 years of its birth. It's finished.
Yeah, that's your dream. Keep on dreaming. You
It's
punk.
over. Communism's
You
dead.
dream.
You
Yeah, China
managed
has the
one of the most
communist-
successful
has the communist party
countries
charge.
in the world.
That's why
and you couldn't
that's
even
why
defeat the
China
Catholic
is
Church.
so successful.
You couldn't
It's
even
the most
defeat the Catholic
successful
Church.
economy.
Communism.
The Catholic Church, couldn't they fight the Catholic Church?
They couldn't defeat the Catholic Church.
Can you come here, please?
Your totalitarian ideology is dead.
So hold on.
Can you come here,
The
please?
Catholic Church is the
You are on camera.
It's a lie.
Come
It was
here.
Russia.
You are
It's
on
right.
camera.
It was the
Russia,
site
no,
of
I thought it was maybe
rebellion
Orthodox.
against your
I thought it was maybe
totalitarianism.
Orthodox.
It's still alive. It survived your
Yeah, but it's
totalitarianism.
little. Obviously,
So
but
you
so
couldn't even
what?
We've dealt with the
So
Catholic
what?
Church in this country in
Can I
1500.
please carry on with the meeting? Can I please carry on with the meeting?
Go to Venezuela. Go to Venezuela.
communism.
There's communism there.
Pay me the ticket, I
Chavez,
go.
communism
Pay me the
revolution.
ticket,
They're
I
eating
go
the animals
tomorrow.
in the zoo now.
Pay me the ticket.
You people are murderers.
He's not
You're
a
ideologues
He's a
and you're
social
murderers.
democrat.
You have killed far more people than any communist could ever kill in 1,000 years. In 1,000 years. This is typical bigotry of ignorance. He doesn't even, never read one line of Marxism, never read any kind of Marxist, Leninist publications, and he just repeats like a stupid parrot what the fake news and lying media of the bankers and the corporation tells him. How can you remain so stupid at age 50 or 60? How can you remain so retarded? No, well, I was just saying that it's wrong to call third world people with the name third world because it's a very insulting term. These people in Latin America, in North Africa, are white race. They are as white as the ideal of Germanic Hitler's Germany, tall, blonde, blue eyes. They are a white race. So why do you call them third world, which implies darkies? They are not darkies in Latin America. The most productive working class is made up of people of Hispanic origin. Spanish people are by definition white race. They were invaded throughout the century. Since Roman time, before Julius Caesar, they were invaded by Germanic tribes. Same Italy. Italy has been invaded by the Germanic tribes since Etruscan times, 4,000 years before Christ.
There's a little bit Aryan there.
Well,
Bit worrying, bit worrying.
no, I'm
Bit
just
on the
saying,
NAZI
don't
type of
assume
thing.
that,
It's talking about Germanic, so what? It isn't
because,
South American part slave,
you know, I tell you
part,
why.
indigenous
I tell you why
population.
is I use to make a precise definition.
It's a bit worrying,
have,
Germanic.
You have to make a precise definition because manufacturing has been outsourced to third world countries. Third world because of very cheap labor. On top of that, the companies that have the shirt or whatever job made in third world countries, they don't have to obey by the regulations, the regulatory standards. That's why you see all of a sudden a factory blazed on fire, 1,000 workers die in the fire because the regulations are almost zeros. Safety regulations are zeros. And obviously, manufacturing that is done without safety regulation, without regulation against pollution, against harmful chemical or pesticides used, it is far more productive because if the company has to spend money in research or in putting filters, anti-pollutant, put fire safety regulation, that would imply far higher costs which are forced to apply in European countries. But you don't have to do that in poor countries because there is corruption. You know why India, for example, is so poor? India is a country that have a very thriving food export. It's based on food export. For example, Darjeeling tea is the most expensive tea in the world. And it creates hard cash, but not for India. The people there are still starving, disease, overpopulated. It creates hard cash for corporations, mostly American English corporations. So, what's happened, these corporations are so powerful that they put their own bootlickers in the government of India. So Modi will never be able to raise the living standard of Indian like China did, that lifted 700 million people out of poverty. It cannot do so for the simple reason that these bootlickers of the multinational corporation are put into power into parliament and they don't pay taxation. How can a country provide for the most poor, the most destitute, if it doesn't get the revenues from this taxation, which is from produce exported, especially to Europe and the United States? Darjeeling tea is drank especially in first world countries, including even Australia, Canada, United States, and Europe, first world countries. It is a very, very important income for India, but it stays frozen in the coffers of multi-millionaires, Indian multi-millionaires, and the population doesn't get any provisions, neither in healthcare, and that's why there is a rampant epidemics, new strands of epidemic disease, and all kind of scabies, leprosy, diseases that were wiped off in Europe 500 years ago. In India, they are behind Europe of 1,000 years, comparatively. So that is the reason why India, compared to China, is so far behind. That's why I'm always stressing on the importance of a Marxist-Leninist revolution. Because Karl Marx said, either the working class has a say, or the working class will be butchered, will be made destitute, hungry, diseased, and it will be a world full of new strands of epidemic and a very unequal and pitiful world where the environment, the ozone layer will be destroyed, no regulation, everything will be at the mercy of those that are only interested of fattening their coffers. So that is why it is very important to have revolution. I'm very glad.
The working class in Britain are racist, xenophobic, militarist.
Well, yesterday 1 million working class. Yesterday 1 million working class.
They are the very last people who are going to make a
Downing
revolution.
Street.
They are not the oppressed of society anymore.
Well, yesterday was 1 million working class anti-Brexit. Those were working class. What do you say about that? Are they all stupid? 1 million people are stupid? Of course not. Why they don't want Brexit? Why? Because Brexit, well, you can say, I do, I don't, I think this way, I think that way. The fact is that people are waking up. Look at me, now I will be in YouTube. I will be in the internet. They can see my speech all over the world. I get on average of 1,500 viewers in my videos, and that goes all around the world. So now the people are pretty much better informed, and they are much more qualified to defend themselves. So don't tell me that the working class are stupid. Yeah, there are a lot of stupid people that are like Tommy Robertson, idiot, a plumber. A plumber, what is a plumber? He's a working class. And he thinks that as long as he comes in the park, stir up hatred, and bash the Muslim, bash everybody, he can have a political platform in Downing Street. Can you imagine the delusion of this guy?
So what is your point?
My point is that the working class is not simply manual labor that is mostly done in third world countries. Also, service labor is working class. Service means clerical jobs, technical jobs.
Is that your doctrine? I'm sorry, is that your doctrine?
Huh?
Your doctrine is about labor, force.
No.
So what is it? What are you talking about?
The distinction that Marx made.
Oh, you're a Marxist.
About the working class.
But Marx's idea is
Can
dead.
I finish?
It's dead.
You ask a question and then you keep interrupting. Learn some manners.
Okay, go on then.
Marx made a distinction between service workers and the other are not service. Sorry, the others are service workers. Are those that are more into clerical jobs, which is not as exploited as a worker. You know, as a worker, service workers are not as exploited.
Okay.
And why?
Why?
Because, as a matter of fact, I made a mistake. As a matter of fact, what you do, you somehow have a position of power. Once you are on the internet, you can send messages and create a union of workers to fight against exploitation. Okay. The factory workers are much more disunited. It's true that in service workers there is office gossip and all this type of stabbing each other in the back, but somehow they have a network of interchange that doesn't exist as much in the factory. In the factory...
Are you reviving Marxism?
Reviving has never been
I thought it was dead. I thought Marxism was a phony doctrine and it's dead.
Fake news tell you. China has a Marxist-Leninist in power and is doing just fine.
No, it's not.
And that will be the trend of humanity. If humanity
it's a mixed economy, a mixed economy of capitalism,
it's a planned economy.
Free market,
you know what it is, a planned economy?
And socialism.
What is a planned economy? China is a planned economy. What is a planned economy? What is it?
Planned economy? I don't know.
Planned means
You just made it up.
that the government has the power to transport the capital where is most needed. For example,
Okay.
if the banks are ripping off the population and using capital to put into assets. For example, you buy a property anywhere in London is an asset because it will keep on increasing in value, or you will get very good rents for your property.
But is that Marxism?
That is an
Is that
asset.
Marxism?
Well, I tell you the ABC because you don't know anything and you want to tell me that Marxism is dead and you had never read one line of Marxist theory or thinking. So why do you come here? He's dead. He's dead.
Oh, I
When
said
you
his
haven't
ideology is
read even one word of Marxism.
Well, I've come
So
to
why
you
do
for
you
it.
talk
No,
about
I've come
it?
to you for it.
Well, then stick around.
Marx was a Trustafarian.
And,
never did a day's work in his life. Never even visited the
He was a
factory.
journalist.
Never even
He
visited.
was
Most
a
of his works were
journalist.
written by Engels after he died.
He was a journalist and a writer.
Ideologue, communist puppet.
He was a phony.
He was
Well,
an absolute fraud. Never
I'm
worked a day
telling
in his
you
life.
what
was
he
a
said
phony.
clearly.
Never visited
He's a
the
phony.
factory.
Don't listen to
Complete
that
con job.
stupid.
No,
He
he's
talks,
right.
yes,
He's
scream
right.
and run
He's
away.
right. He's
How can he be right? He runs away like a coward. If you're right, you stay here. You don't run away like a stupid mouse. Huh? If you run away, it's because you are a coward. You haven't got the guts
Maybe he's
to
busy.
hear a different
Maybe he's
opinion.
busy. Maybe he's
That
busy.
is what's happening in the park. A bunch of lunatic religious nutcases over there. Some American wherever talking
Well,
a
they
bunch
think
of
you're a
nonsense.
nutcase. They think you're a nutcase.
Well, they can think what they want.
And you can
I
think what
talk
you like.
about reality, economics, condensed economics. That's the reality.
Where is Marx economy in the world? Where is it?
The Marxist economy is strictly the welfare of the working class. The only producer of wealth in the world is the working
That's
class.
socialism,
That
social
is-
justice. What's it got to do with Marx? Socialism is social
Who
justice.
started about? Tell me, who was the first socialist that ever existed? Who was?
Well, if I told you, you'd think I'm
Tell me. I'm not just here
You
to
want my opinion?
bang you over the head.
Yeah,
Tell
the
me.
first socialist
Who was the first
To
socialist?
me was Muhammad. Muhammad was the first socialist. Bring women
Yeah,
into a position
yeah, in a
of
way, yes,
society
in a way,
and
yes.
bring,
In a way, but socialism,
Equality and
which is the stronghold,
fairness and social justice.
stronghold of socialism, which is the keystone of socialism, which is it? It's not.
Can you define socialism first of all, though? Because
No, I
what do
was
you mean by
talking
socialism?
about.
It's, everybody's right to equal access to education, medicine, welfare, and education, and stuff
Socialism,
like that.
I tell you what is socialism today. And
Equal
what
rights, equal
was
rights.
socialism in the past? In the past,
I just told you,
the
equal rights.
Can I finish?
Oh, okay.
In the past, story.
Thank you very much.
Story. The first socialist
Muhammad was the first
Plato.
socialist.
Jesus Christ was
Plato,
the socialist.
2,500 years before
He was
Christ.
good. He was good.
You
Yeah,
know
they're
why
all
he's
from the
considered
same
a
school.
socialist?
Same God, same school.
Do you know why Plato was
but
considered the
take
first
it easy.
socialist?
Muhammad was much
fine.
greater than Jesus.
I'm fine.
Go and read
I'm
the
fine,
historian.
I'm fine.
Muhammad
I'm
was
fine,
much
brother, I'm
greater
fine.
than Jesus.
I'm fine, brother. But who was the first socialist? Or
Yeah.
How do you define socialism?
I just said the first socialist that has been recognized in the world is Plato. Plato, the Greek philosopher that lived 2,500 years BC.
So the heart
Okay.
of socialism is what? According to Plato.
Plato, let me finish. Plato has been considered a socialist because he was stressing on the principle of equality between human beings, even equality with children who are the most powerless, or with old people who are also very powerless. He stressed.
Do you believe in equality or equity?
Well,
which do you believe in? Equality?
Equity. She means equity.
Equity is linked to income. Equality is a moral
There is
stand.
no such a thing as
A
equality.
moral
There's
stand-
equity.
No, equity is income.
It's
Moral
not just
stand.
no. Equity is not just about income, is it? Because if you turn around and say you have an equity of income, okay, in other words, where your starting point is, you can have an equity of education, okay? That each person should actually have access to education, an education which is good education,
Hello.
standard education.
If you want that, you can have it.
Where did it actually end up
If you
with?
want, you can have it. Later on. Yeah, I just finished.
Excuse me, he's
Where-
got a
where-
good point.
Yeah,
Can you
where would
answer
end
it?
up?
He's talking about equity.
Are you looking at
I'm sorry, boss.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt him.
No, it was saying, this gentleman was saying that there is a difference between equity and equality. You know why he said that? Because I said the first socialist was Plato, who was stressing on the importance of equality between human beings. Second major socialist, I would say, that stressed on equality was Robert Owen, 17th century. And he wrote Uchronia. Uchronia was strictly based on the importance of people being equal. Third one was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the 18th century, that was a major agent of the French Revolution, said until we don't have equality between humans, we will remain savages. Third one, fourth one, let me finish. Fourth socialist, historically considered socialist, Robert Owen. He believed so much in equality that he even built a town called the New Harmony in West Virginia to create a community, small community, but he was hoping it would expand, of equal citizens. Even children, old people were to be considered equal. So that is the history of what is socialism. Then obviously there were all the Bakunin, all the anarchists. They were also stressing principles of equality. Then Karl Marx, the major one, because Karl Marx beefed up his principle. Let me finish.
Take it easy.
Answer
his question about
equality. I hear what you're saying about a history from Plato to the present day about about socialism and equality. But what I would query with you is this: two things. Firstly, you haven't defined exactly what you said. Socialism is about equality.
You didn't give me a chance to define it.
But I'm asking for that.
First of all, I had to make the chronohistory of why socialism dates from 2000 BC, 2500 BC Plato. I had to make the chronohistory. Now I tell you what is socialism today. At this moment, socialism is strictly working class organization. For example, yesterday 1 million traveled from other parts of England to Downing Street and the Parliament to stress that certain policies, right-wing policies of Theresa May and a bunch of Tories are wrong, and they want their voice being heard. They are not saying we want to stay in Britain, we want this, we want that. We are a majority, we are 1 million, taking away from leisure and
17.4 million of us voted for Leave. So don't claim to be a majority with 1 million. 17.4 million of us voted to leave for various reasons.
The EU is not a socialist organisation. The EU is not socialist.
Can I finish what is?
But it isn't, and it is actually a capitalist organisation. It is. Okay, it is a free trade organisation by definition, capitalist. By definition. Don't say that it is. No, it's not. It's a free trade. It is a capitalist organisation. It is. It's capitalist. That's the point. Free trade.
If it's really free trade, we wouldn't be having this problem. But in terms
well, if you talk about the word capitalist, you know, you can say your opinion. You know, I reject labels. Itself a label is very reductionist. Don't go for labels. But if you want me to give you the definition of socialism, I say a socialist, a good socialist is the one that looks for friends, alliances, and interchange of ideas and exchange on a like-minded basis of belief according to the income, to the background, to the history. A fascist is somebody that looks for enemies. Enemies in the field of color of skin, enemies in the field of religious affiliation, enemies in the field of income.
Can you give me an example of one single socialist society, or socialist state, that has actually worked in such a way as to promote socialism? If you look at communist Russia, I mean, we're looking at Russia now, okay, right?
Which was never socialist.
No, there were elements of socialism.
There were elements, but it was
For
not
example,
socialist. It was
the Soviet were manager, highly educated,
Leon Trotsky murdered anarchists, trade unionists, people going on strike.
Yeah,
he murdered them. He shot them. Shot them in the back of the head. He ordered the decimation of soldiers.
That I agree with you.
He was terrible. He was terrible. Trotsky was a murderous, evil person.
Yeah, in any case, socialism is strictly the doctrine of the working class, emancipation of the working class. Okay? You want to talk? Come here. No, come, I'll hold her. No, you are very informed. You come from the battlefield. You are coming from the battlefield. So if you talk about Trotsky, yeah, I cannot Afghanistan. This lady was 8 years in the prisons of the Taliban. 8 years. She's the most qualified to know what is that the Anglo exported into poor countries. The Anglos exported into poor countries famine, disease, oppression, and that's why India, Afghanistan, Middle East are so backward, because the Anglo underdeveloped these countries. Kyle! Wait. Kyle!
Content over everything from your man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
And this is called a typical right-winger in the park, coming here just because he wants to bash Muslims, he wants to bash any immigrant, you know, he's a follower of Tommy Robinson. That's why he gets so much exposure. But you should talk, you know? You know a lot. You know, we are on camera. There is a camera. I can download you in my channel.